Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about something that feels, well, impossible for so many of us: buying a house. It doesn't matter where you live, it's just become this crazy, out of reach dream. Okay, so let's dive right in. To really get what's going on today, we've got to look back because the rulebook for buying a house has been completely rewritten in just a few decades. For most of the 20th century, the math was pretty simple, right? A typical house would set you back about 3 years of your household's income. That was just normal. But today, that whole idea of affordability has just, poof, vanished. The average home now costs more than 5 times what a typical family brings in. It's wild. And look, this isn't just you feeling this way. A huge global study looked at 95 major cities and basically confirmed it. This dream is dying. And that's a big deal, because when homeownership goes away, a huge piece of economic stability for the middle class just evaporates with it. So let's look at the really extreme end of this, okay? In a city like Hong Kong, it takes a staggering 14 years of a typical income just to buy a home. 14 years! And it's not just Hong Kong. You've got places like Sydney, Vancouver. They're right there too, with prices hitting 9, 10, even 13 times what people earn. The situation is so bad, it's literally off the charts. Get this. Things have gotten so crazy that for the first time in over 20 years, the researchers who study this stuff had to make up a brand new category to describe what's happening. They call it impossibly unaffordable. Just let that sink in. Out of 95 major cities around the world, not a single one is considered affordable anymore. Not one. So the big question is, how did we even get here? Well, to figure this out, we need to understand that the very idea of what a house is has totally changed. 30 years ago, a home was, a home. It was shelter. Today, it's basically a financial asset, like a stock or a bond. Okay, so here's what happened. Over the past couple of decades, this absolute tidal wave of cash washed over the global economy. You had wealthy individuals, big corporations, giant investment funds. All of them were just swimming in money, and they needed a safe place to put it. And they weren't exactly spending it on groceries. They were buying up assets. And what became the perfect target for all that cash? You guessed it, housing. It makes sense, right? It's a physical thing, everyone needs a place to live, and it looked like a rock-solid bet for making steady money. And so, just like that, homes went from being places to live to being financial products, traded on this massive global market. So you've got this incredible new demand from investors all over the world, and it just slams head-on into a supply of housing that's been artificially choked off. We're talking about policies that, sure, probably started with good intentions, things like zoning limits to protect green space or rules about how tall buildings can be, but the end result was this tangled mess of restrictions that slowed down new construction to a snail's pace. And that's where this whole thing just went into overdrive. See, the less housing there was, the more valuable it became. And the more valuable it got, the more investors wanted a piece of the action. That speculation just drove prices up even more, creating this vicious cycle, this feedback loop that's still spinning today. So yeah, it wasn't just one single thing. It was a perfect storm, really. A whole chain reaction of causes that all collided at once and pushed prices into a totally different stratosphere, way out of reach for regular people. And if you want to pinpoint the exact moment everything broke, it's right here. For decades, it was simple. As people's incomes went up, house prices went up with them. It was a nice, steady climb together. But then the 1990s hit, and those two lines just split apart. House prices shot for the moon, while wages pretty much stayed flat on the ground, and they have never, ever come back together. So while things like global trade and automation were basically putting a cap on how much middle-class folks could earn, the price of assets, especially homes, just exploded. They doubled, tripled, even quadrupled in value. Your paychecks simply had no chance of keeping up. So what are you going to do? People did the only thing they could. They went deeper and deeper into debt. As buyers started taking out bigger and bigger loans just to compete, the banks were happy to lend them the money because, hey, prices were going up, so it looked like a safe bet. But every time a bank approved a bigger loan, a buyer could bid even higher, which pushed prices up, and then the whole crazy cycle just started all over again. And then, just when you thought things couldn't possibly get any crazier, the pandemic happened. Suddenly, construction costs went through the roof. Supply chains just shattered. And then, here's the kicker, when interest rates finally went up to try and cool the whole thing down, prices didn't crash. Why not? Because millions of people who already owned homes were sitting on these amazing, super low mortgage rates, and there was no way they were going to sell. So the whole market just froze. But okay, enough with the charts and the economics. Let's talk about the human cost. Because all of this has a very, very real impact on people's lives and on the way our society is structured. Just take a look at where the paycheck goes for someone in a major city these days. It doesn't matter if it's LA or Sydney, it's pretty normal for renters to spend over a third of their entire income just to keep a roof over their head. And by the way, that's the official line for what's considered unaffordable. It's not the exception anymore. It's the norm for millions. And this isn't just about money. It reshapes entire lives. People delay starting families, they put off having kids, they have to turn down better jobs in other cities because they just can't afford to move there. So what you get is a locked housing market creating a locked labor market. And it's hollowing out our biggest, most productive cities, pushing out the very essential workers that make them run. And this is where you see the Great Divide really widening. Renters and people trying to buy their first home are just falling further and further behind. Meanwhile, people who already own homes are getting richer, not because they worked harder, but just because their property values went up. To put a number on it, the total value of all the real estate in the world is now worth about 3.5 times the entire world's annual GDP. That's insane. Okay, so the problem is obviously massive. But is there a fix? Can anything actually be done about this? Well, let's take a look at how some countries are at least trying to stop this crazy spiral. You're seeing a few different strategies play out across the globe. You've got places like New Zealand that are all in on boosting supply. Then you have Singapore, which takes this really radical approach and basically treats housing like public infrastructure, building and selling it directly. And then there are others, like Wales and Taiwan, that are using taxes to try and clamp down on all that speculation. But what's interesting is that all of these different solutions have one thing in common. They all recognize that you can't just build more homes and call it a day. You have to rethink the whole system, who's buying the homes, where we're building them, and what kind of economy this whole situation is actually fueling. And in the end, maybe the whole path forward really comes down to how we as a society answer one fundamental question. What is a home for? Is it first and foremost a place to live, or has it become just another place for the wealthy to park their cash? I think how we answer that is going to shape everything for generations to come.